Welcome to the Lone Star Keto Podcast. I'm your host, Amber. My vision for this podcast is to showcase experts in the keto carnivore community, as well as those who have compelling stories that inspire and give others hope. My wish is that no one has to suffer like I did. If you find value in this podcast, please consider subscribing and hitting that notification button. And as always, feel free to share. Thank you so much for your support. Hi, I'm Amber, and welcome to the Lone Star Keto Podcast. Today we have some really special guests, Ashley and Sarah Armstrong, known as the Strong Sisters. And, wait, excuse me, should I say Dr. Ashley and Sarah Armstrong?
That's Dr. Ashley, but I'll place myself in there.
Heck yeah, I love that. Congratulations to you, by the way, on that, and we'll get to that. But welcome, y'all. It's been a while since we've been able to chat.
Thank you for having us on, Amber. We appreciate this opportunity, and then we also really appreciate your support and our friendship. So we're very grateful to have met you.
Yeah, well, you know, I love y'all. Y'all are the best.
For over a year.
I know. And I've been following y'all, and I just can't be more impressed with what y'all are doing and how you're evolving and how you're going for your dreams. You're going for your goals, and that's so impressive. And you're young, and I love that. So let's talk a little bit about your backgrounds. I want to know education backgrounds, and I want to know how y'all got to this point. And we'll talk about the health stuff later, but I want to know that kind of background first.
Yeah, sure. So she's a little bit more educated than me, so I'll start shorter. I got my bachelor's in health sciences, and then I went after college. I did like extra education in integrative nutrition, and that's kind of what got us into the health world a little bit more. It didn't teach me anything about carnivore or keto, really. It kind of just touched on the main things you think of when you think of like the health sphere. But yeah, so that's my education. And then Ashley.
Well, you also are precision nutrition.
Oh yeah, well there's a few nutrition.
Oh, you are?
Yeah, I did
precision. Oh, I didn't know that. I did that.
I think it was great. It's very well-rounded nutrition.
Yes, I agree.
Yeah, there's no like prerogative or bias in that education, and I really liked it. I kind of forgot about that.
Yeah, and
oh yeah.
Yeah, and then I did my undergrad in mechanical engineering, and then I did a master's in mechanical engineering, and I just finished up my doctorate in mechanical engineering, and my research was kind of focused on like 3D bioprinting and improving the precision of that to enable like advanced, more precise fabrication of, for example, like bone replacement material, or the possibility of doing like biofabricated organ transplants and things like that. And so it was kind of in the field of control theory. So that's like kind of applied math plus regenerative medicine. And it's like, I've been in school now for 9 years. So 4 years in undergrad and then 5 years graduate school. And I am now kind of, after I completely wrap things up, going to enter the world of entrepreneurship and not really continue down the academia path. And there's definitely a reason for that, but yeah, it's kind of an overview of our, yeah.
Is that impressive or what? Are these girls not like just awesome, just with that? But wait till you hear all the other things they're doing. I'm just like in awe, seriously, y'all. And they're so young. I have to keep saying that because I'm, 54 and I still don't know what I want to be when I grow up. So, here we go. Okay.
She's gorgeous. What?
Oh my God.
Yeah. It's okay. I'll figure it out. Oh, y'all, I love y'all. Okay, so let's talk about your newest venture, what y'all are really working on, the big one. I want you to talk all about that and why you're doing it.
Okay, so we are starting our own farm, a regenerative farm, and we're actually moving from this house right now to our new property tomorrow. This is like a huge life change, weird time in our lives, but it's very exciting. So we have a passion for regenerative agriculture. Ashley's going to talk more about that, but really we're going to our farm this fall, but we're not going to be starting with our animals until the spring. So this is something that we're going to be talking a lot about, is like the financial problems with trying to do things like this. It's not going to be very lucrative money-wise for a long time, and it probably will never be. So for that reason, we're going to be doing a lot of other things on the side. So for example, we're going to be starting a wedding and events barn, and we're going to hope that that's going to bring people onto our farm property. And we'll
So do those in parallel.
Yeah, so we're going to work on other things in parallel to have the money to start our farm. And that's something that we really want to stress, because I know that a lot of people have been like, how are you guys affording to start this farm? And like, I really want to do that. How do I do that? So we're going to really try to commit to showing that like we're like the financial struggle that we're inevitably going to go through and how we're going to get out of that. So hopefully it can help other people. So we're going to be documenting that a lot too.
That's awesome.
We are kind of putting, like I said, I am not continuing down academia, and we're kind of just going all in on this because it is our passion. So we have been involved in like health and wellness. We've been interested in that for like 10 years. And what we define as what's healthy has obviously evolved in that process. But last year, we kind of had this realization that the health of our nation has gone down, right? And simultaneously, the health of our soil has gone down as well. And so those have gone down in parallel, and that's not coincidence. Like those are ultimately linked. And before that, we kind of never really realized that. We always thought, you know, food came from the grocery store, like just choose your healthy foods and you'll be fine. But if we continue to degrade our soil, our food is going to have less and less nutrients. And there are plenty of studies documenting this, that the micronutrients in a lot of our food, especially produce, has decreased anywhere from 25 to 75% over the last 100 years. And those same 100 years, we've really ramped up our industrial agricultural practices that are destroying the health of our soil. So the percent organic matter in our soil is going down. And it's sad because we have some of the best soil in the world, and we're kind of degrading it year after year. And so when we had that realization, that's when like our passion for regenerative farming like peaked, because we realized, hey, we're seeking health. And one of the best ways we can do that is by repairing the health of the soil and then growing healthy food and healthy soil. Like that's optimal health. And so that's what we're chasing, and that's what we're passionate about sharing.
I love that. Okay, so I think some people don't really even understand. I mean, you know, if you talk about the soil as far as growing food, okay, you can kind of see that. But what people don't understand is that also affects your meat that you eat, because the animals are eating that vegetation that's coming from that depleted soil. Can you talk just a little bit about that so people can understand? Just because you're eating meat doesn't mean you're necessarily getting everything optimal.
Yeah, so I think that there are a lot of unknowns out there, and the micronutrient content of meat is going to vary depending on where it was raised, and we don't have enough data documenting that. It would be very unrealistic for small farmers to be able to send their meat off to a lab to get the micronutrient content out of it, because that's a very expensive test. But there's more and more data building up about that. I know that Gabe Brown, he's a regenerative farmer in North Dakota. He is getting some studies done on his meat, and there's some really interesting data coming out there in terms of increased micronutrients and completely different fatty acid profile compared to grain-fed meat. So a lot of people pull from the US food database and compare the grass-fed and grain-fed, but I don't even think that that's like a fair comparison. I think that it would be really interesting to compare grain-fed versus a cow that was raised in a truly regenerative manner, because grass-fed is like this umbrella term that encompasses a lot of different processes. And so I think that there's just a lot more data that needs to be collected in terms of the micronutrient content.
Yeah, I think this is something that like our mindset's really evolved on too. So when we first started Carnivore, we were like we were really like, oh yeah, 100% grass-fed. Like we thought that like that was how you get all your nutrients. And I mean, I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with that, but I think that especially when it comes to like our purpose now, which is like healing the soil, healing the land, having like all cattle go through a stage where they're on grass. So
even if they're grain-fed.
They're all helping that mission if they're raised responsibly and holistically. And so just because a farmer finishes their cattle on grain doesn't automatically mean like, oh, you know, it doesn't have the same nutrients, it didn't help the soil. And I think that that message can get really skewed sometimes. And then people are like, all gung-ho, 100% grass-fed. And then like, don't like farmers that supplement grain. One of our favorite farmers here who practices regenerative agriculture, he holistically grazes his animals. He supplements grain to move his cattle, and there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, and the term, like I was saying, the term grass-fed, like, okay, you can keep your cattle on the same pasture and grass feed them all year round, but what happens if you overgraze and destroy that piece of property? So it's just, there's a lot of loose terms out there, and I think what's most important, if you care about these things, is just really asking your farmer certain questions about how they raise their produce, how they rotate their cows, and are they doing it in a regenerative manner, if that's important to you. But like she said, even grain-fed cattle are still out on pasture for most of their life, and then most commonly they're sent to a feedlot. There's some controversial thoughts about feedlots in terms of, I mean, I think that there's no question about it that a fully grass-fed cow versus a feedlot cow is going to be better for the environment. I think that there's no refuting on that. But like I said, there's like data, the data that's there right now shows very similar nutrient profiles, but I don't think that the data was collected well enough in terms of that collecting from a fully regenerative cow that was raised on soil that had like high % organic matter. And I think that that data will be coming out soonish.
Awesome. That's awesome. So can you explain in simple terms, how do you plan to regenerate the soil? How is that possible? I mean, what do you have to do?
Yeah, so the really exciting thing is that Mother Nature responds well if you work with her, right? So especially with the soil that we will be in. So we will be in Southwest Michigan, and that's very rich soil, and it responds well apparently to like changing farming practices. So a lot of farmers these days, a lot of conventional farmers kind of believe that it takes 1,000 years to grow an inch of topsoil. So they kind of believe that they can't participate in that soil repairing process because I won't live that long, but that's from the bottom up. So not many people talk about top-down soil building, which is where regenerative agriculture comes into play. So our property, we acquired about 28 acres, most of which has been used for corn and soy crop rotation, conventionally raised, conventionally agged for the last like decade. So you can imagine what the field looks like. One year it's corn, the next year it's soybean, and that's only like 2/3 to half the year. The other half of the year, the land is just barren, brown, dead, has no cover, has no life.
It's pretty much what you see when you drive through like the Midwest.
Yeah. And so we've been talking to a lot of farmers in terms of like the best first next steps. And Mr. Will Harris down at White Oak Pastures, Dr. Roundtree at Michigan State University, they are really well known for their grazing techniques, and they have like a hobby of converting conventional fields into these beautiful green pastures. And so I think the process involves regenerative agriculture principles, and I can review a few of those because I think they're relatively simple to understand. So the first one is this concept called year-long green. So you want the soil to have cover, you want it to have protection, you want it to have armor to protect it against a lot of rain, wind, cold. And so one of the principles is year-long green, which involves like planting cover crops or just planting seeds all year round. So rather than just having the corn and soy during that growing season, plant cover crops in the off season. So that way there's grass covering that soil. And what that will do, that grass will do photosynthesis and cycle carbon out of the air into the soil. And so that will improve the % organic matter in the soil. So that's one principle. And then another principle is animal integration. So cows, pigs, chickens, lamb, goats, they all play a unique role in repairing the health of the soil. And it's almost like prescribing a medicine based on your condition. Each of those animals have a specific role depending on the quality of your land. So since ours is rather small and very fragile because it has no life, Mr. Will Harris suggests that we do lamb because they're not as heavy as cows, so they won't be as destructive from the start, but they're ruminant animals, so they're gonna really help us they're push their manure and their other like obviously pee and stuff. So like that's the natural fertilizer, and they're going to help us push % organic matter into the soil. So animal integration is a really important piece of it. Our first steps will be to seed. So we're going to put some annual and perennial seeds because there's no life on the soil. And unfortunately, we will have to continue with conventional agricultural practices from the start. So we will have to use a synthetic fertilizer. We'll try to use organic fertilizer just because there's nothing to get those seeds growing. And so Dr. Jason Roundtree talks about how you will have to start with conventional and you'll weed yourself out to be able to do fully regenerative. So it's almost like alcoholism, like you have to like slowly reduce, drug addict, like things. It's a similar concept where you have to reduce your load. And so we will seed, we'll have to spray a little bit to just get life growing. And then once there's sufficient grass up, that's when we'll bring the animals in. And then we'll do something that Mr. Will Harris at White Oak Pastures calls hay bombing. So we'll do this in the winter months next year, where it's this idea that you have to feed animals, especially ruminants, hay in the winter months because there's just not as much grass where we live. And so it's this idea that you're going to put extra hay out there so that way the animals are eating the hay, but then the ruminants are also pushing that hay into the soil, and that's organic matter that's being pushed into the soil. So that's Mr. Will Harris's biggest technique is the hay bombing, and then followed by seeding the following spring. So that's a combination of things that is going to hopefully increase the % organic matter in our soil. It's going to take a lot of time, like a few years, but we're excited and that's what we're passionate about. And ideally down the line, we'd love to acquire more and more conventional ag fields like around us to convert them into perennial pastures.
That is so cool. It's fascinating. That's okay. So how many lambs are y'all going to start with? Have you figured that out?
So we were trying to do it this fall.
Topic.
We were trying to do it this fall. I'm sad. A few farmers have advised us just don't even try this fall because we have to move. I have to finish up some research stuff. We have to apply to jobs. There's just a lot going on. And we were going to try to start with about 30 ewes. So that's female lambs. And we're going to wait until the spring. And so that will really depend. So it depends on what type of grazing strategy we're going to adopt from the beginning. I'm sure you've seen like high intensity grazing where it's this idea that you have a lot of poundage of animals in a small area and you rotate them quickly. And so that emulates what used to happen with bison roaming around. We just don't have enough pasture yet to be able to do that efficiently because you have to rotate really quickly. But a really important piece is that you allow your paddocks to rest in between. So our rotations would probably be too quick and the field wouldn't rest before we would have to put the animals back on. So we're probably gonna have to take a slightly slower approach in the beginning. And we haven't really worked out those numbers, but talking to a few farmers, I think around 30-ish. And so that'll be like next summer.
Very cool, very cool. Okay, so just yesterday I got attacked because I posted something being just a goofy thing on TikTok about being a meat eater, just a goofy thing. And I got attacked for, you have no idea how bad all that meat eating is on the environment. What's your take on that?
That's so hard because I think that like in terms of what's in the media, like far favors the plant-based agenda versus like eating animals. And I think that somebody who, first, it's never worth like arguing with somebody because the chances of you changing somebody's mind is very small. Like they have to want to understand deeper themselves. And so I think what we always do is point people to different resources. And so we like suggest going to check out the Savory Institute and different farmers who have done like added topsoil successfully or practice regenerative agriculture. I don't know. Do you have like a specific response?
Yeah. And I think a simple way to say is like, it's not the cow, it's the how. So that's what that's what great. Diana Rogers says with Sacred Cow.
Oh yeah. It's another great resource.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sacred Cow. I should have thought of that one.
Yeah. I think having people take a step back and actually looking at the greenhouse gas emissions and the percentages of each sector. Cattle produce a small percentage relative to other like transportation and other sectors of the economy. And I think that that's an important part. But like Sarah said, pointing people to resources where they can continue to educate themselves. I think regenerative agriculture is left out of this picture. And you often see like the PETA, they film like feedlots, right?
Feedlots, yes.
They should go like check out regenerative farms.
Yeah.
And I think the best thing to point someone to would be the QUANSER, QUANSER life cycle analysis test of white oak pastures, where they were shown to operate at a net carbon negative for their beef operation. And in that report, it compares it to the Beyond Beef Burger, which operates at a net carbon positive. So I think just pointing people in those resources, they can't argue with that.
I'll add that.
Yeah, you can't argue with science like that.
And there was also a recent article that came out called Regenerative Agriculture and the Soil Carbon Solution. A new paper outlines vision for climate action, saying that they can potentially draw down 100% of the CO2 emissions into the soil. And so it was based out of the Rodale Institute, and the paper is called Regenerative Agriculture and the Soil Carbon Solution. So I think that's another really cool, because that was in September of 2020. So it's more people talking about it at least, and it's going to be a little bit more relevant and timely. So that's another cool resource.
Cool. I'll definitely have to add some links below, because we get asked this all the time, or there's always going to be somebody. And what I don't understand is, why come on my page? I'm pretty open about what I do and what I believe in. I'm not going to go follow a bunch of, vegans or something because I don't believe in that. I don't have if that's what they want to do, I don't have a problem with that, but I'm not going to go deliberately follow them so I control them and say stuff. It's like, it's your life. You do what you want to do. So it just kind of blows my mind, but it's always good to have, not, again, like you said, it doesn't matter because they don't want to know anyway, but still, it's nice to have something.
I saw a quote, I don't remember the exact phrasing of it, but it was something along the lines of it's more powerful to support something rather than to go and just argue against things. And I think that people really miss that.
We've learned this.
Yeah, we have, as we've shared more and get attacked.
Yeah, I bet. Which that's a good transition into our next topic. Let me just make sure. Oh, I just wanted to ask one quick thing. What is y'all's view on hunting, or do you have an opinion on that or view?
We've wanted to go hunting for so long. We just don't have any of the materials or any of the connections, but I think it's going to be a future experience. That I think it's beautiful, the fact that you can be so resourceful to go capture your own animal and then butcher it responsibly, obviously. And I think that it's a natural part of being a human. We didn't have processing facilities when our ancestors were growing up. That's just not how things worked. We did it ourselves. And so I don't see it. That's just my opinion. I think I would probably have a really hard time if I was out there and actually taking the shot. I just know myself, but I think it's a beautiful, natural thing.
And I think that it's important to consider that if you were a meat eater, a form of hunting goes on to get your meat for you. And if you don't feel comfortable in that process, that's totally okay. That's our mother. She doesn't like to think about it. She doesn't like to know about it. And that's okay. But just knowing that has to happen for any type of meat that you're eating, whether it's the processor or if it's you actually doing that action, it's just a circle of life.
Yeah, absolutely. That's the truth. And I was kind of like your mother. I'm not quite so much like that anymore, but I still don't think I physically could go do that. I think my boys are hunters. We have a freezer full of wild game. They go elk hunting. They do all these different stuff. We have wild hogs. We have venison. We have, you name it, we have it. And so, I've grown up with that. So I have no issue with it. It's just me personally. I don't know if I could do it. I can tell you I probably couldn't do it. But, I understand it and I get it. But yeah. So I just think it's kind of an interesting subject, talking about hunting. My son brought up the fact that my podcasts don't really talk about that kind of side. And, I kind of promote carnivore. So it's kind of like the process, right? But yet I haven't really, but I did have a girl hunter on, so that'll be coming out soon. So I thought with y'all having the background you do, that would be a good subject to ask y'all about.
I've been involved in the processing part of farming. It's not fun. It really is not, but it's just, part of the process. And I think it does not matter if you don't feel comfortable doing it. It doesn't matter if you feel comfortable. It doesn't matter if our mom doesn't feel comfortable. Like that, that's okay. That's understandable. But just accepting that it has to happen in order for you to continue. Yeah, exactly.
From what I've learned is like, so if somebody's really into hunting and they're really passionate about it, they've done the research to know how to do it right. And they're not randomly going out there and shooting things, because you actually can't do that. Like you have to go to specific areas and like know what you're doing. So I think that there's probably I don't like research this, but I'm just guessing there's probably a lot of like biases towards it and like misunderstandings of what goes on. Like your son probably know more about this.
And I'm sure there's a wrong way and I'm sure there's a right way, and so we don't know enough about that.
I think what's his name? Keto Carnivore King.
Keto Savage does it too?
Yeah, Keto Savage. Like the people within the carnivore community who like really doing it.
Yes.
Those are people to follow if you're interested.
Yeah. I'm gonna eventually try to get them on. We'll see if I can. But I think it's, you know, people need to understand, you know, that it's not just this willy-nilly kind of thing, and that most of the hunters, or at least the ones I know, they actually love animals. It's not about cruelty. It's not about, you know, just going in and getting some horns to slap on a wall. Most hunters are not like that. I mean, they're always going to have those idiots, but, you know, I don't know them. So, you know, it's like not my family. Okay.
One last thing on that. So when we were looking for farm property in Michigan, it was really interesting because a lot of the best farm property was like, for our purposes, so regenerative agriculture, was hunting grounds. And that's because plant cover crops that entice the animals to come to it. So in a regenerative aspect, I think that it actually probably has some benefits if they're planting like seasonally in the right things. So that's another interesting thing to think about.
I like that. Well, I am super impressed that y'all are, you know, doing this. I mean, it sounds like it's going to be a long process, a lot of work, but it's going to be really beneficial, I think. And more people that do it like you, the better we're all going to be. So kudos to y'all. I mean, that's a huge undertaking. So, you know, again, so what can I say? Okay, now let's get into the health aspect of what y'all been going through. Y'all have been on a pretty major journey here, dealing with, you know, all the issues you had and going and evolving as you go. I want to talk a little bit about that. Can y'all give everyone kind of a brief journey of what you've been through? Just kind of go through your issues and how you dealt with it, and then we'll get into specifics.
Yeah. So I'm going to try to give a brief timeline. So when we started, probably like a decade ago, we've been into health and wellness for a long time. And like I said, what we have viewed as healthy has evolved as we've self-educated and learned more. So when we started, we were really wrapped in the like low fat. So I need to get my whole grains in. So I'm going to eat my whole wheat pasta, my whole wheat bread, my chicken breast, and my broccoli. That's pretty much a summary of what I ate during like important adolescent years. And I was missing out on animal products and fat soluble vitamins and things like that. Then we got into like, if it fits your macros, IIFYM, which is like a community out there that I do think there's power in tracking calories. I do think so, macros and calories. But we kind of got really wrapped into it. And so we thought that we were going to be healthy as long as we just hit our carb, fat, and protein contents of the day. And if we fit in a box of cereal or Oreos into that day, as long as it was in our macros, that's totally fine. But that kind of made us really lose touch in focusing on nutrient dense foods. We were consuming a lot of like bread that was fortified with iron and other things, refined grains, vegetable oils. We were consuming a lot of like margarines, and still a lot of chicken. Like we never really were into vegetables. A lot of vegetables. Yeah. Then we kind of started to experience health problems. So Sarah got diagnosed with an autoimmune condition, and it was called what was it called? Non-differentiated.
Undifferentiated connective tissue disease.
And the rheumatologist prescribed her with some medication that was used for lupus, and kind of told her that you're just going to have to just try to be as healthy as you can. Don't exercise. Don't see the sun. Those are going to cause damage, and lupus is going to come to you. It's inevitable. It's just unfortunate. So
because the chronic is attached to anything autoimmune,
and
I think makes somebody automatically feel like a victim.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
And so I didn't get as extensive testing done, but we were experiencing many of the same symptoms: the butterfly rashes, Raynaud's, brain fog, constipation, fatigue. And we didn't want to do, our mom said, no, you're not doing the prescription medication. And so we started to really take our health into our own hands and do a lot of self-educating about health and wellness. And that got us to fasting. And we were eating a ton of vegetables at this time because we thought that was the best thing to do. We were still eating like high protein, but we were getting our protein in from like egg whites and eggs, and then just a lot of vegetables. So we got into fasting. That's what led us into keto. We were definitely plant-based keto. So we consumed a ton of cruciferous vegetables because those are typically lower in carb. We called ourselves like vegan, VEGGAN, because we still ate eggs. And that just kind of that fasting kind of helped with certain things, but it didn't fix all of our issues. And so that's what led us to carnivore. And I think that carnivore is a very powerful elimination diet. For the first time in our life, we were consuming bioavailable nutrients from animal products. We were eliminated those cruciferous vegetables that were probably causing problems in our guts. And we felt really good because we removed all those things and finally had bioavailable nutrients. We're consuming liver for the first time in our lives. And a year after carnivore, we fixed a lot of our issues, but we still had amenorrhea. So we have had hormonal issues for a long time in our life. We've been relatively lean for most of our life, and we've really been into strength training and working out. And so just a lot of stressors on our system. And I think adding the zero carb and fasting on top of that, I think people forget that those are also stressors. Adding all of that on top of it, there was no way in our minds that we were going to fix our amenorrhea by continuing down the same path. And so this year we finally did a real talk with ourselves and said, we are not actually healthy yet because we still don't have normal periods as females. And so we took a step back, stopped fasting. We added in certain carbohydrate sources, easy to digest, that didn't cause digestive problems. And we significantly reduced the amount that we work out. And so Sarah got her period back and I'm still waiting on mine, but that's kind of where we are today. We've gained 20 pounds since this healing hormone journey, which is very uncomfortable, but I think that it's a necessary step in healing your hormones. And so it's always hard to share our journey because we're kind of coming opposite direction from many people. Many people are coming like they need to do weight loss to reach their certain goals, but we never went into keto and carnivore for weight loss. We actually gained weight during that process. We went to it because we thought it was best for our health. And so where we are today, we think is what's best for our health right now. And we are very aware that that is going to look different for everyone. But we really enjoy this current way of eating, which is animal-based. We're still consuming red meat every day. We're consuming saturated fats. We're consuming liver, organs, but then we're also consuming carbohydrates like fruits, squash, honey, on occasion, some starches like potatoes and rice. And we feel really good.
That's awesome. Did you want to say anything, Sarah?
Oh, no, that was great. It was a great.
You got it? Okay. I just making sure. Didn't want to leave you out. Okay. Well, okay. You said you gained some weight. Now, I know that y'all kind of struggled with some body image kind of issues at one point. So, and I understand how it is to go through all of that and I had multiple disorders. So I was very sensitive to that. And then I just recently have started gaining weight without changing anything on my food. Zero, nothing, not the amount. Well, maybe a little bit less. I mean, just slightly lower just because I don't have an appetite much, but there's something going on, but I'm also hitting that menopause. So but it does mess with you a little bit because you're like, wait a minute now here. How are y'all handling that? I know that y'all are intelligent enough to know that this is probably part of the process, but it's still got to mess a little bit with your head.
Right. So what you're experiencing now is what we started to experience at the end of our carnivore journey.
Yeah.
And that was a huge red flag because we started to we had some event we had to get ready for, and we were going to cut, which means like, get a little bit leaner.
Mm-hmm.
And so we went on a little diet and we just started gaining weight with eating less. And it was like, oh my gosh, what's going on? And it was very frustrating. And that's what really opened our eyes to like, okay, there's probably something like hormonal or something going on with our thyroid, adrenal fatigue, some people like to call it, whatever you want to call it. For us, it was hypothalamic amenorrhea. And so I'm not saying that's what's happening to you at all, but like, I'm just saying like, I get that feeling. And, oh, that's so frustrating. And so for us, there was already that, like, we were already like gaining weight while trying to eat less, which I think was worse because you feel so out of control, right? So like we're eating now, so inevitably we're gaining weight, but when you're eating less, it's like, well, where do I go from here?
Exactly.
And so that was actually probably one of the most challenging moments because we knew we had to do something drastic to move away from that. And from there, it meant our mentality around food was a little bit messed up after so long of keto and carnivore because we were very afraid of almost like everything. And I think that there's good reason for people to be, you know, a little bit hesitant of eating certain foods when they didn't react well to them, right? But we never truly tested what worked and what didn't work for us. And so it was kind of like a reversal of that. And over the course of like 5-6 months, I personally gained like 40 pounds. And I did have a lot of weight to gain. Like I admit that I'm not like the last time you saw me, I probably looked crazy. And people today will still be like, oh, you could still gain weight. But I think it's all relative to where you're coming from. So me plus 40 pounds, I obviously feel different. And obviously it was a challenge. But I think that we have really recognized that everything that we once believed was beautiful and healthy in the past, so like thin, lean, athletic, like society has put that out there that is not actually a standard. And so like adopting that as what's beautiful and healthy is just like, it's very flawed because then it puts yourself in this position of trying to achieve that. And you, when trying to achieve that, you can become unhealthy. And that's what happened to us. And so reconstructing in our minds what we think is beautiful and healthy has really, really helped. And granted, there's still days when we're like, I feel like one of our followers who's going through the same thing, she's like, today I woke up and I feel like Santa Claus. Because when you're, for somebody who, you start gaining weight, your body is fearful and it gains it in your midsection first.
To protect your organs.
Yeah, which makes sense. So like people are going to see my arms now and be like, oh, you're still really small. But I mean, I'm not like flaunting. What I call it is my like toddler tummy. It's adult toddler. So you gain weight in your stomach first. And I think that's so hard for females because that's where you're trying to lose weight, right?
To protect it.
And so that's like finding humor in it has been really helpful too. So like just talking about it, being open about it, making light of the situation and realizing that like in a year from now, I will thank myself for going through this.
So I think we still deal with mental struggles every day. And I think that that's important to talk about and disclose. We aren't sunshine, rainbows, unicorns with this. Like it's hard. Any way that you look at it, gaining weight as a female in this current society is hard. And that's a problem. And so there are a few things that we try to work on. So Sarah's been really good about this is changing the vocabulary, how you describe yourself. So rather than using fat, oh my God, I'm fat. No, I'm well nourished. Or like,
I like it.
This is silly, but like, if I fall, I have a cushion that will protect my bone.
I started this new thing yesterday. I was like, hey, Ash, we should start doing this every day. And I just go.
I love it. Well, you got to change your mindset. It's so huge. I mean,
it's like reaffirming it. Like I love every part of me. I'm not, you know, because another thing people don't realize is like having a bad body image or these minds, that's a stress and that can negatively impact your health.
Yes.
So it's all connected.
And then I think two more things. One thing, who are you following on social media? If there are people who are really lean and ripped that you're following, stop following them. It's going to be very hard for you to look at that and be like, I don't look like that and something's wrong with me. But that is not true. You don't know.
Unless they have a good message.
Yeah, but you don't know what those people are hiding. Social media, you can share your positives. You don't see behind the scenes. And regret so much kind of pretending that everything was fine for so long on social media and not really disclosing this. But society, there's like articles out there that say it's okay if you don't have your period. Like, who cares? Just go on birth control. And so society has this message that you don't really need to have your normal functioning period. And like, there's so many issues. So be careful of who you're following. What was my last one? What was my other?
Girl, I don't know.
My other and then second, what better way to honor and love yourself than to fully nourish yourself with high quality foods, beautiful amounts of foods. We're not proponents of go eat all processed food, go eat a ton of refined grains and vegetable oils. No, go eat real foods and nourish your body and love it for how it is and fuel it with the nutrients that it needs to heal. I think that returning to that, like, wow, that's one of the best ways that I can honor and love myself. I'm still working on this day to day, but that's what I'm trying to view my journey right now.
I think, can I like touch? So I think this is a really interesting topic within like fasting, carnivore, keto, is because there's this minimalist mindset. And I'm not just talking about the food you're eating, like that's another subject. I'm talking about the amount. And so it's almost like you get yourself down to a very small, not very small, it's relative, but like a lower caloric amount. What's it called? Like, I saw Simlan talking about this, where you are eating less and you're fasting more, and it's kind of like the turtle mentality where you have a really long lifespan. I don't know. Okay, what it's called?
Consuming, like eating in a caloric deficit.
So slight caloric deficit.
So that you maintain your leanness all year round and you increase your lifespan.
But while you're doing that, your metabolic rate slows. And I think that for him, maybe it was great, or it is great, but I think that females, like I really think that we are different, and we have to. She's yelling, I take up the whole screen.
And then she does this with
But anyway,
all right now.
One of the largest lessons we learned throughout this journey, and especially this past year, is that as females, we are a little different. And if that means eating more and having more cushion, like we wouldn't be here without females. So
well, we are different. I'm sorry. I know that's kind of a hard thing for some people to comprehend, but we really are. I mean, we were designed to be different. We have a different purpose, you know, so of course we're going to have things that are different. And so it only makes sense that our bodies are going to need something a little bit different. I mean, we all need kind of the same thing, but slightly variations of things. And I think that's what the message y'all are trying to get out, is that there's not a one way fits all. And like some people, okay, fine, do a complete carnivore. That works great for them. But for other people, they may need to, you know, add in different things. Or eventually, you know, it may be great for a time period, but, you know, great today, but maybe tomorrow you may have to, you know, switch things up. And there's nothing wrong with that. You don't have to be married to a diet, you know, dogma name. Just because you say you're a certain thing doesn't mean that you can't evolve and change and experiment and see what works. And that's what I love about y'all, that you did it because you're more concerned about your health than, you know, following a cult, if you will. And not that I'm saying we're all cults. No, I'm not saying it, but you know what I mean? That, you know, so here's a question for you. When you started implementing other things than animal-based foods, carnivore, how did the community react to that?
It really depends on, so there are some people out there, and I would say that at a certain point in time, we definitely thought this too, that carnivore is the only way for optimal health. And if you do anything else, you are giving into the system, you are a sugar addict, and you don't need any of those foods. And humans evolved only on animal-based products. And so that is all that we need. And for those type of people, there's no convincing them that there's another way to be healthy. And so there's no point in arguing with them. And so we just kind of let those people go. Like, that's okay. If you are going to stay strict to dogma, that's okay. Our channel is about sharing our journey every step of the way. We are not strong carnivore sisters. We use carnivore as a tool we thought that was the best thing to do for our health at the time. And I think that it was a very valuable period of our life. There was definitely a lot of pushback in the beginning from certain people who are very dogmatic, and that's okay. Like, that really is okay. We don't want to be a part of something so dogmatic. So we really had to take a step back and be careful about what we were sharing, because we didn't want to burn any bridges with previous people that we had connected with. And I would say there was a small group of people who were really dogmatic, but overall, like, for any Strong Sister follower that is listening to this, like, we love and appreciate you guys so much for evolving with us and staying with our journey. We have received a lot of support from our community that we are very grateful for.
Awesome. Yeah. Well, I'm glad. And I figured, because like when I started seeing, you know, some of this, I was like, ooh, here we go. Because y'all were very vocal about carnivore. And I'm vocal, but I'm also not under the belief that every single person should do it or needs to do it. You know, I think it's a great tool, like you mentioned, especially when you're trying to do an elimination diet to figure out what's going on, what's bothering you. But if you feel the, you know, desire, or you're still not complete, you know, healthy, try some other things. That's the whole point, is you have to keep trying to find what works for you. So, you know, some of those people, I was just like, oh my goodness, here we go. Because sometimes you're just not allowed to veer out of your, you know,
lane,
your box. Yeah. And so, you know, kudos to y'all for doing that and for sharing your journey and showing that it's okay. It's okay. It's okay to evolve. It's all right. And okay, I can't imagine what it felt like, because you were on The Doctors with Dr. Paul Saladino.
Yep.
And the way those doctors came at Paul and y'all, kind of to a degree, not so much, they were a little bit nicer to you, but some of the things that they said, and what did you feel? I mean, and then looking back at it now, has your attitude changed about what you were feeling, if that makes sense?
Yeah, I think that I like blocked it out of my memory. Like, even the way we eat now is still different than what they were promoting. They were kind of like on a mission to tear down us instead of like understand why. And I think it would have been way more valuable if we could have explained why.
But they muted us.
Yeah, they muted us. So I think that what they wanted it to come off as was that we had extreme eating disorders, that we went to carnivore just to lose weight. And so we didn't get to share any of the health benefit part, which I think like that's why we were sharing it to begin with, was like, guys, like my inflammation's down, all this and all these exciting things that were happening last year for the time being. And so we didn't get to share that. And they were kind of just saying that like we needed to eat the vegetables, and here's like, we still don't eat the vegetables.
Yeah,
like,
that's a huge thing that people label us now. Like,
they were
find a green thing on my plate.
What we're still like huge promoters of is that you're going to get a large amount of your nutrients from animal products, right? Like animal meats and organs. And they were unwilling to accept that and saying that we were going to get nutrient deficiencies because we were including things like broccoli.
Yeah.
And that we still, like, that's just still something that's like a disconnection is, no, we still get our nutrients from animal products. We've included these other foods in for different reasons. And so I think that's the same.
Yeah, but I would say that one thing, reflecting back on our year of carnivore, for us, it led to disordered thinking around food. It really did. Reflecting on it, we didn't want to accept it at the time.
Yeah.
But
I actually had a video. It was like, the carnivore diet is not an eating disorder. And I think for a lot of people it's not. But for me, like coming from a background of disordered eating, I like really had to reassess, like, why am I actually afraid of that food? I think there's a difference in like understanding and then being afraid. So I had to go figure out why.
Yeah.
Because otherwise there's just like, I couldn't justify in my mind, and it was bad.
Like for me, I think that there's a huge difference between raw honey or fruit versus refined whole grain bread or cruciferous vegetables grown with NPK fertilizer. Like not all carbs are created equal. Dr. Paul Saladino will be talking about this on the Joe Rogan podcast. There's a plant toxicity spectrum. And I think a lot of times in carnivore, all carbs are created equal and lumped into the same category as bad. And we got wrapped in that for a little bit. And that was not good for us because that caused more stress.
Oh, it moved away from the health part of it because it just started fighting over a macronutrient. And it's like, we all care about the micronutrients. Like, why are we even, because carnivore isn't necessarily keto, right? By eliminating plants, you get rid of carbs, so it kind of is. But we were starting to this fight about macros, and it's like, no, we're all here to get nutrients, and how are we getting that in animal products?
Yeah. That's such a touchy topic for so many different people, but I do agree with you. And I don't care what diet lifestyle it is, whether you're vegan or carnivore or keto, whatever. If you get too caught up in it to where, like you said, you're afraid, or, I have kind of I've never been afraid of anything. No food am I afraid of, but I do kind of in my head label things as, bad, not necessarily good, but some bad because it reacts in my body badly. So therefore I label that bad. Now I don't consider it bad for everyone, but it's bad for me. So I look at it not like, oh my God, I'm so scared of it, I can't put it in my body. It's more like, I really don't want that. I don't want it at all because I know what it does to me. So, I do think there is a difference. And, when you do start thinking of food in that way to where you fear it, I do think that kind of becomes a problem. I mean, there's reasons to fear food, like if you're allergic to shellfish, I mean, yeah, you should fear having that, put on your plate. Okay, that's a different story, but.
Yeah, so because you have that experience and you're like, all right, I didn't feel too good after eating that. So and I think that it's valuable for everybody to figure that out.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, I want to ask a personal question.
Okay.
Now, y'all spend an enormous amount of time together and have for a long time. Tell me, what's the relationship like? Do y'all fight?
Oh, I thought you were going to ask our relationship statuses. Some people think we're together, but we're not.
Our name is not.
We haven't really shared our other relationships on our social media, and we probably will in the future because I think we just going forward, it's more of our life. Our relationship is it's great. She's my best friend, obviously. I'm gonna make her uncomfortable. But we obviously fight sometimes, but it literally lasts 30 seconds. It's like a sass, extreme sass.
Extreme sass.
For 30 seconds.
She is sassy.
Wait, but she's sassy too. She's so sassy.
Oh, I so want to see this.
And then it's it's gone. We just move on. Literally, it's a minute at most. And I think that we've been through so much together over the last, we've been through extremely bad breakups. We've been through all of our health issues together. We live in this house together. We've raised 3 dogs together. So we're inseparable, and we recognize that one person's sass one day isn't going to ruin that. But
That's awesome.
We keep each other in check too. So I'm the real talk for her. I reflected on something that she said the other day, and I gave her a real talk. And
what?
Yeah, I was you sometimes just don't remember.
Okay.
So, but we are very different. Have you ever heard of the Enneagram test?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I'm type 3.
I'm type 4. So completely different.
And so
wow.
There's some contrasting things there that I think adds to our relationship dynamic.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
So you have it's good and bad when you're different. I mean, it's a good thing to be different because you bring different stuff to the table.
Yeah.
As long as you can,
our entrepreneur venture next, I'm more excited about the soil science. She's more excited about the wedding events barn. And so
oh, fun. Yeah.
And then we're both, of course,
I feel
we're both we're both excited about each venture. It's just that's good because we'll both be able to really push both forward. So yeah, I would say it's just random sass moments of, for example, if I'm on my phone while she's talking, she's going to call me out on it. You've been on your phone all day, listen to what I'm saying. It's certain things like that.
I don't say it like that.
Yes, we're to the point. Like when we need to criticize something, it's just to the point, quick, and sometimes it's snappy and sassy, but then we move on.
Love it. Okay, let's talk just a second about the wedding barn. I wanted to go back to that anyway, and I forgot. Well, you know, if I lived closer, I would be all up in that, helping y'all with that, because that sounds like so much fun, but it's a lot of work. I'll just warn you that it's a lot of work. I know people who kind of got into that business and going through my daughter's wedding and actually doing most of the planning. It's a lot of work when you're dealing with all that stuff, but it's also so fun. So tell us a little bit about that. Like, what is your vision?
Yeah. So when we bought our farm property, the reason that the investment made so much sense is because it had a pre-existing barn that would work well for.
It's nice too. The pictures I've seen, nice.
Yeah, and so it made sense because we had already come to this realization that just doing the farming wasn't going to be financially sustainable, and so
there's not much cash flow at the beginning of regenerative farms. Cash heavy. And
so we had someone do something else. And I actually, part of my education, I always say health sciences, but encompassing that was like event planning as well. And so my dad and my family, mom and I got really excited about the idea of starting like a wedding and events barn, because it is kind of like a thing these days. You get married in a rustic barn, and I think it's so beautiful.
Yes.
We watch the Hallmark movies with our mom, and I swear to God, like every movie they get married in a barn.
Yeah.
And so
love it.
I know. And so it's a project that is currently underway right now. I think the barn is getting like stained. The inside's getting stained right now. So there's a lot of things that need to be done construction wise. And so when thinking of the financial journey with this whole farm, we sold our house and we made a profit of about $80,000 overall. And so that money is going directly into the barn, so we can get that up and running first and have some weddings next season and hopefully make some money there.
That's awesome.
Yeah, but I think we also were fortunate. We have a neighbor up there in Michigan who all of her life has worked on weddings and events, and so she's kind of in that retiring stage. So she's been really helping us while we haven't been there right now. And so it's been a team effort, and we're really excited about it. We're going to start an Instagram soon. We just got some renderings done of the barn.
Yeah.
And we're just going to start sharing all of it. And like,
that's so cool.
Yeah, I'm excited because I don't want to put it on like our main page because some people will be like, I don't care about that.
Yeah, I know. Oh, I have to be sure to follow that because I'm very interested in that journey, because I find all that fascinating, and you know, I could tell you a whole story on that, but yeah, I think the barn thing is cool. Now, I'm a little ignorant as far as Michigan. My husband's actually from Michigan. He moved from Michigan to Texas, but so he kind of knows Michigan. I don't. I know they got snow and stuff like that. I'm a Texan. Okay, it's hot. It's hot. You know, cold weather lasts about 5 minutes here, and so you know, I'm not into that. Anyway, the barns here without AC, when you're talking anywhere after April, whoo, doggy. So is that something y'all have to worry about? Is like, are y'all going to air condition it, or do you not need it in Michigan? I don't know.
Yeah, at the start, we definitely can't afford the air conditioning. I think that's an investment like 2 to 3 years down. For now, there's a lot of ways to get air circulating by like opening different things, and like our windows have little they kind of open like this, and so they allow air circulation in, and having fans. I think what we're most concerned about is like, so wedding season goes primarily like May through October, I'd say. At the end of October, it starts getting really cold.
Yeah.
And so we're not getting heaters either the first few seasons, but that's something that you can work around and bring in like little heaters and stuff. Yeah. So
but I want to make it work. I want to touch on one thing. So the wedding barns, we have found a way to like integrate it into our regenerative agriculture mission, because what better way to have 20, 30, 50 weddings a year where you gather a ton of people there and they get to look out at the acres and be like, oh, what's this farm all about? And like, that's an educational opportunity to spread the message about regenerative agriculture. So we're really
smart. Love it. That's awesome. Love it. Well, I can't wait to see how things unfold. I'm going to be watching y'all's journey. God, I wish that we lived closer. We're kind of far, because I would so like want to go check all that out. Ooh, okay. So we've been talking a while, but let me just make sure. Okay. The last thing to talk about, and I want to be sure we talk about this, is your new book. Can you tell us a little bit about it, what's involved in it, and when do you think it'll be released?
Yeah, so we have a cookbook. Anybody who's like watched our YouTubes knows we've been talking about this for a long time. And it's a cookbook with Dr. Paul Saladino. So it's evolved a lot, as we all have. And so it's no longer just full carnivore. It's actually like more how we eat now. So it's animal based. So every meal is prioritizing an animal product. But there are, Ashley briefly mentioned the plant toxicity spectrum. So that's going to be mentioned in the book. And it's based on Dr. Saladino's thought processes on all this. And so in the book, there's going to be our recipes. There's over like 110 around.
Wow.
And then it's going to involve things like meal templates, timings, a lot of cool different information about like storing and sourcing your food. And then I'm sure Paul will talk a lot about like his reasonings behind things. We're very excited about it. It's actually still going on. So still haven't submitted it, but due to like COVID and the election, the publisher thinks that it would be best to wait to publish it until 2022.
Oh, wow. Okay. Wow. Dang it. We have to wait that long? Bummer. Yeah. Well, publishing, because I used to be a writer, a published writer. And so I kind of know the process. I've kind of done it. I've been an editor. I've been, worked on graphics and book designing. I've kind of done pretty much all of that, and formatting, you name it. So I kind of understand the industry a little bit. And I never went with a big publisher for the reason I didn't want to lose control, and I didn't want to have to wait because they have certain slots. And like you said, and with all this other stuff going on, and the fact that they're not publishing near the amount of books as they used to, just because the way, it's going these days, the publishing business, and so many publishers are gone under, so they do have these little slots. So that, dang it though, having to wait that long.
Yeah, but I think it's important to recognize that like this is going to be one of the first cookbooks out there that doesn't have refined grains, vegetable oils. It incorporates nose to tail products, so liver, heart, spleen, things like that. And so it's going to be a very encompassing book. But yeah, the publisher said that cookbooks do best for New Year, New Me. So they do best when they're published in January. And this January is too quick with COVID. Election, there's going to be a ton of books coming out, and so that's their reasoning for going to 2022. But like you said, when you're going with a big publisher, like we don't have a say in these things, and so it's their decision. Yeah
it is, including the title and whatever else they want to change, or they don't like something. And so I decide, I don't tell me what to do. I'm not one of those people that like being told what to do. I'm like, I'm a control freak apparently, I guess. But yeah, but that's so cool. That's awesome that you have a good publisher and you kind of have an idea of when it's going to come out. And that's exciting. Y'all were doing a photo shoot, I saw. So was that fun?
Oh, it was so fun. It was the week and a half at White Oak Pastures. We shot all the recipe, or 50 of the recipe shots. Probably the hardest week ever, but it'll be worth it, in 2022 when we get to see it.
That's awesome. Yeah, I can't wait. That's definitely on my wish list for sure. So, okay, I guess we better go because I'm sure y'all have tons of stuff to do. But is there any last things you want to say, any advice, any encouragement, whatever, to our typical audience?
Yeah, I think that the fact that we're even still talking right now with how many changes we've gone through, and so we connected initially like based around diet, but the fact that we're still friends even though we've changed like says a lot about everything that's going on here. And I think that that's how you should view all of these things. Like, we talked about this earlier in this episode, don't get so caught up into something where you like lose your identity outside of it. Like for a while, I was just carnivore. Mm-hmm. I didn't know who I was outside of carnivore. And so leaving carnivore was like, I don't know who I am. I lost my identity. And so just recognize that like, there's so many other things in the world. There's so many other like things to be passionate about and to fight about if you want to fight. Just don't get so caught up in something that you can't see past your blinders.
I love that.
My last piece of advice would be health looks different for everyone, and trying to emulate and copy exactly what someone does and then not being able to do it, that's a very slippery slope and can lead to a negative mindset. So always remember that like you are unique and you have to find what's sustainable for you, and don't feel bad if you can't exactly copy what another person is doing.
You're different.
Experiment, be willing to evolve, and your health and you are worth it.
I love that. See, that's why y'all are just the best. And I like how y'all both had like a little something different in a different area to say, and it's so complimented. I love that. Y'all work very well together, and y'all keep doing what you're doing. And I'm so proud of y'all. I can't even say it enough. I'm just proud. I love watching y'all, and I think y'all have grown so much in just the year that I've known y'all, and that's amazing. That's amazing. Keep doing your thing, and don't let anybody else tell you otherwise. So anyway, well, thanks so much for coming on the podcast. It means a lot to me, and love you girls. Bye, y'all.